Hey, I'm a talented person, and I prefer for my viewers to call me Z the Artist. I came up with the name I'm a talented person years ago when I was younger because I wanted to reaffirm myself on who I am, and I also wanted my name to be read as an affirmation to whoever comes across my profile. Whenever somebody says I'm a talented person, it forces them to affirm themselves. I've been making art and animation for years, and eventually I created characters to express emotions that I didn't know how to put into words. Bunny represented freedom. She was the embodiment, personification of freedom. Aurora, who was anxiety, represented anxiety. It was something in my life that I struggled with at the time, and honestly, even to this day, I struggle with it now. And in those memes I made, anxiety was always targeted or possessed by this demon or jinn named Samuel. Now, he wasn't an actual demon or jinn. He was the embodiment of evil. Samuel was the amplifier of anxiety. He was the personification of the evil I saw growing up, the evil I went through, the abuse. So he represented the darkness and fear I felt during a difficult period of my life. But as I grew, my stories grew too. I left off with the everything black meme, if I'm not mistaken, where anxiety battled Samuel. However, anxiety never beat Samuel because Bunny fights because she wants to be free. Anxiety fights. She recognizes the threat and tries to fight it too, but she's also the one living with the aftermath. While the embodiment of evil or abuse can be removed from the immediate situation, removing him doesn't erase what happened. So anxiety is still here. Anxiety remains, not because Samuel won, but because the nervous system doesn't magically forget just because the threat is gone. And eventually, Bunny got tired of fighting for control over something she never had control over in the first place. Neither Bunny or anxiety has to say that they defeated Samuel. Now, she just has to say that he's gone, we're still here, and I'm learning how to live without fighting him every second. I'm not saying that trauma is impossible to overcome. I'm saying overcoming it doesn't necessarily mean becoming untouched by it. Sometimes healing is learning that you don't have to spend every waking moment fighting the fact that something happened. So no, I never made a final battle follow-up because there was no final battle. There was just life afterward. If you've been around my channel for a while, you might remember that the last big piece of lore I made was everything black followed by Kratos. And if you watched those and thought, what the hell was happening? Let me explain. In everything black, anxiety battled Samuel. And then there was a huge explosion and nobody actually won. Anxiety was injured and Samuel possesses her. Not literally, it just means he amplified anxiety. And she developed horns and wings and she's eventually cast into hell. None of that was meant to be literal because anxiety wasn't finding some demon and getting thrown into hell. That's just how I experienced what was happening to me. So hell equaled what life felt like when the abuse and trauma had taken over everything. And then in Kratos, it escalated it. The evil doesn't just attack anxiety, it uses her. Anxiety excitement is to make talent's life miserable. Talent is the embodiment of talented, which is my persona here in purple and green. The goal was to make talent doubt herself so much that she stops creating, that she has nothing else to hold on to. And once anxiety refuses, she's possessed instead. And the possession was basically my way of visualizing anxiety being amplified by something darker. It wasn't that anxiety herself was evil, it was that the anxiety had become intertwined with everything else I was already dealing with. And then Talent wakes up in a burning house. And then the police and ambulance appear dead. They weren't literally dead. It was just a symbol for help. They represented help. So when they're dead, the people couldn't fix what was happening because of the corrupted system where abuse and violence ruled. And then Talent gets taken into space and starts suffocating, which leads directly into Freedom. Freedom literally pulls Talent down out the situation, but then Freedom has to fight Samuel. So since Freedom can't simply kill him because Samuel is intertwined with anxiety, killing Samuel would symbolically mean destroying anxiety too, and that's why the conflict doesn't resolve normally. Talent is also held captive, symbolizing that at the time my creativity was being suppressed by the abuse and the trauma that was going on around me. It's not hero defeats villain, trauma disappears. It's freedom has to coexist with the fact anxiety is still here. Now, in the end, Samuel mocks Freedom for just now getting her wings while bragging about his own is because the wings aren't cool demon angel anatomy. They're basically representations of power gained through suffering possession versus freedom gained through surviving it. Samuel was basically saying, you think you're powerful now and I have these, and he wants freedom to doubt herself so that way she doesn't feel good enough to unleash her talent or create. Now at the end, the Guardian says that it's over, the chaos is over. At the time, I thought that was the end of the story, but looking back, I realized I wasn't actually ending the story. I was closing the chapter because I had reached the point where I could stop creating it. You can't write a clean ending to something you're still living through. I always thought I would eventually come back and finish that storyline. I thought there would be some final battle where anxiety was healed, Samuel was defeated, freedom won, and everything would finally make sense. But that's not how trauma works. You can overcome it, you can heal, you could become free, but that doesn't mean the thing that happened to you never existed or that you'll never be affected by it again. And Samuel being gone doesn't mean anxiety disappears, and maybe that's why I never made the next episode, because at the time I was still living in that story. I stopped trying to write trauma like it needed a final boss battle. Freedom doesn't have to kill anxiety. Anxiety doesn't have to disappear. And Samuel doesn't have to keep controlling the story. So when the Guardian said the chaos is over, it didn't mean everything was fixed. It was more like, I'm not going to keep fighting this particular battle forever. Yeah, that's my story. So if you like creative chaos, original stories, and whatever my brain decides to cook up next, welcome to my channel, where talent is alive and well. You're a talented person.